I want to briefly talk about this individual from Albertville, Alabama, who was actually charged with harboring insects. And we don't know, we're so ignorant in our society, we don't know how to rebut or what to do when we receive a affidavit from the code enforcement officer. These are photographs taken by the code enforcement officer when he charged this person with having a public nuisance on his property. Now, he has private property. Can a public nuisance exist on private property? And I would say, when presented with that blunt question, most people would say, no, I don't think it can. Well, that's true, it can. I'm going to kind of cut this thing short. This is a copy of the affidavit that was left on the front door of this man's home in Albertville. It essentially says that you, the owner of the property, have 7 days to rebut my statements, the code enforcement officer's statement. If he had waited 7 days and never found it, he would have been guilty, because it says right here in this paragraph, if you don't rebut what we're asserting in 7 days, you're guilty, you waive all rights to an appeal, and here's your fine. The fine is $500, or we'll just give you 6 months in jail, or both, and then if you don't pay it, well, we're going to put a lien against your property and sell it, satisfy the lien. And this is contract law. This is not a public violation. This is not a criminal law. It's a contract that is presented to the private property owner, and because we don't know how to rebut it, we wind up paying that fine. Well, now in this case, let me go back, and here now, man is a created being. Man created the state governments, and then the state governments created the federal government. These are very distinct jurisdictions, and these are legal fictions. These two right here, they have no authority. They're the same thing as a corporation. They can't speak. They're dead. They're written down on a piece of paper. It has to have an officer to come forward. A legal fiction is a corporation. It does not exist beyond the imagination of its creators. Therefore, it cannot interact with a living soul. It requires a responsible party, a living soul to stand and make the accusation. So if you receive a statement from the code enforcement officer, he's the agent of the principal. There has to be an officer for the corporate body of the city or county to sign on the dotted line and make the accusation against you. Because if you go to court and you want the city of Albertville or the city of Roanoke to come and make a statement, it can't sit on the stand. You got to have an officer of the corporation to come and sit on the stand so you can hear the accusations against you. The responsible party, living soul, must, in order to establish a controversy, and we call it the 4 legs of the controversy, or ratification of commencement. The very first time I made this particular presentation, I got a lady to stand up and read Matthew 5:25, because all of this is religious. Now, I'm not asking anyone here to believe in Jesus Christ. Thomas Jefferson said, I am a follower of Christ, but I'm not a believer in him. And that was because the tenets in Christianity teaches liberty and freedom. And when we apply that, whether you believe in Christ or not, you're going to have liberty and freedom in your society. So Matthew 5:25 simply says, resolve the issue before you get to the judge, because you don't know if whether or not the judge is going to be honest and whether or not you're going to wind up in jail in an unjust situation. Now, so what happened here was that the individual that was left this affidavit on his front door began to question the situation, wanting to know 4 very specific things from the city before there was ever a court date set. In other words, when he got the affidavit, he began to rebut, and part of that rebuttal was to know the 4 legs of the controversy, or ratification of commencement. And the city couldn't bring it forth. They couldn't bring him before the judge and accuse him of anything, because it would have been fraud before the judge. So they never brought it before the judge. They continued it every month for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, in January, they said he had cut his grass. I don't know about y'all, we don't cut grass in January. And they released him and said, that's the end of that. This has shown to work in one case. I think it will work in other cases. Let me run on through this. Now, the four things, the first, there has to be a responsible party for the city, the corporation, to stand and make the accusation. There has to be an account of damages. What damage did I do, my actions caused to the city or to you, the individual? It's two. A witness. Can't be the code enforcement officer, can't be a police officer. He's a biased witness. Has to be somebody that has observed my actions and confirms the accuser that says that my actions have caused damages. And again, he has to have an account of his damages. It's three. Law contract is broken. What law did I break because I have insects on my property? Now, all four of those things have to be present in order for there to be a controversy. Now, let me see if I can get this right. Now, here we're going to review everything. I'm going to go over this thing one more time. And I'm going to use a table to try to bring this into your mind and help remember. First, we have to have an accuser, and he has to complain to the authorities. And that is one leg of that table. All right, then we've got to have a breach of contract or law broken. That's the other leg of the table, second leg. Then we've got to have damages. What damages did the guy suffer because I did something against him? Well, that's the third leg, and that goes right there. And then we've got to have another leg of this table, and that is a witness. Has to be an unbiased witness, somebody that's outside the parameters. He can't be an employee of the person that is making the accusation. All right, that's the four legs of the controversy, or the ratification of commencement. And that's what this individual, when he received that notice of public nuisance on his property, he began to ask these four things in writing. You can't ask an important question orally. It has to be notarized in order for your documents coming from private jurisdiction into public to take notice. It's best if you have two witnesses. As a matter of fact, if you have two witnesses, it's not absolutely necessary to have it notarized. My viewpoint is to notarize it and get two witnesses. All right, so let's go on further. The four legs support the table, and now the judge can come and place his scale on this table. Now, his part in this is merely to allow the two parties, the plaintiff and the defendant, to put their papers on the scale or their evidence. Now, if you rebut orally, what weight does that have against a written affidavit from the city? Has none. You have to rebut, and you have to rebut in a very specific manner in order for your rebuttal to take weight against that of the city. Now let's see where this goes. If one leg of the table is missing, the judge cannot place his scale on that table and then look at the evidence in order to determine which one has more weight. There is no subject matter, therefore the judge has no jurisdiction to enter the scene. And that was the case with this guy in Albertville. They would not allow him to move beyond those little swinging gates, which is the jurisdictional line for the judge. They always got him off in another room. They didn't even want people to hear what was going on. They wanted to know, did you do anything regarding the insects or do anything about cutting your grass? Now, he's talking about the merits of the case. You don't want to talk about the merits of the case because the four legs aren't here. We don't want to jump the gun. If the four legs aren't here, there can't be any merit to the case. Don't discuss with me, the lawyer. This is what he said to the lawyer. Don't discuss with me anything dealing with what's on my private property until you come forward with all four legs. There's no subject matter here. You've got to produce those four legs in order for this controversy to exist, and then we can move forward and talk about maybe that my truck doesn't have a tag, or my truck doesn't run, or I may or may not have anything on my property. But at this point, you talk to me about these four legs. And that lawyer knew exactly what he was talking about. So now this is what we need to begin to understand. Where does due process begin? Well, it begins in 525. It begins when a controversy arises. And now there's got to be those four things. And you want to bring this out before you have that court date. You want to get all this done and above board. You don't want to have your public resources used to adjudicate a case like this, very simply. love your neighbor as you love yourself. Therefore, controversy between neighbors should be resolved without the aid of a third party, and the judge is that third party.